to start the show. Joshua Moroles podcast, you already know. With a special guest, Jinks in the building. Learning how to podcast, we out here fulfilling. Mic check, 1, 2.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the Sesh. Today I got a special guest. Lee, please introduce yourself and let everybody know what you do.
Hi, I'm Jinks. I'm actually a real estate broker, but I've got a new, direction for my life, and I reached out to Josh to see if I could get him to point me in the right direction.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because I get asked a lot how to do podcasting, and I kind of just know how to do it. It's kind of one of those things, and then I get asked, and I try to explain it, but it takes too damn long. So I was like, I don't know where to start. I know how I did it. So I asked you to come on the podcast so you can have a podcast about podcasting. So please share away. What do you have questions on?
Oh, gosh, I don't even know where to start, right? So I have this thought, this plan, this idea about traveling the country. And I want to interview people. I want to talk to them about, what's their life like? What motivates them? What do they love? What do they hate about where they live, their community, and the country? Yeah. And so that's really kind of what I'm wanting to do. And then I have some experience with video and with audio and so forth, but I've never done a podcast. I've never done any true, YouTube stuff before. I just kind of want to know, where do I begin?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the most interesting things that you'll find is that the equipment is the least of your problems. Getting it out and getting it distributed is one of the main things, because you can have a podcast, you can hold it onto it, and you can interview all these people, but if it doesn't go anywhere, it's kind of just in your computer and in your thing. So I think one of the first things that people should really learn is the distribution part. So after you have your thing done, right? Your podcast is done, it sounds good, it looks good. Now, where do you distribute it? And the thing that I found a long time ago was called anchorfm.com. Spotify bought that. So now it's under Spotify for podcasters. And this is where you distribute all of your content onto Apple, onto Spotify. And I think this is one of the things that people really don't understand is how do you get your podcast out? That's where you do it. It's through Spotify for podcasting, and this is where it distributes it. This is where you put all your descriptions, all your SEO for your specific podcasts, and this is where you put your art and all this stuff. So that's the most important thing, because, like I said, if you get all your podcasts and you just have them in your computer, what do you do with them? You need to distribute them. And Spotify for podcasters is where you get it distributed. And then also on top of that, you can put it on YouTube and on Facebook, Instagram. And I think also breaking them down into micro pieces of content usually works better in most cases, because I don't care who you are. Not even my mom will listen to an hour of me speaking to somebody. So breaking it up into meaningful 1-minute conversations works really good on social media.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And so this Spotify for podcasts, is that this Anchor FM that you were talking about?
Yeah, okay. Spotify acquired it years back. They saw that the same thing that I said, that podcasting is going to be huge. I was talking about since 2016, and still nobody talks about podcasting. So it's one of those things that I was pushing the envelope, like podcasting is going to be the next big thing. And it never came, and then more podcasts came out locally. I was like, yes, finally, because I don't want to be the only podcast in town, because it's the most boring things. Like, if I'm the only guy that's doing podcasts, nobody knows what a damn podcast is. So if more people are coming in, they're pushing the podcast name, then people are going to start finding out about me and stuff like that. So I think it's important that more people have podcasts.
Okay. Well, so this brings up, I guess, a good question. What's the difference between podcast, a vlog, which I guess I know the difference between those two, or just a YouTube channel in itself?
Yeah, well, the interesting thing is I was on Rock and Roll James' show. So technically it's a podcast. It depends on how you want to pitch it. Do you want to go after sponsors? You can call it a show. So if I call it the Josh Moto Show, now I can go after sponsors, but it's the same thing with podcasting. So I guess it's the way you want to wrap it up and present it to people. I've always pushed the podcast name because I wanted to push podcasting. And I feel like the business that I'm in is digital marketing, right? So I push that every business owner should be in front of the camera no matter what, because nobody's going to sell your product better than you as a business owner. So I always push that, and a podcast is the best way to be able to market yourself, because people get to see your mannerisms. They get to see how you speak. They get to see the little quirks that make you who you are. They get to see your imperfections and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think it's just developing a relationship, like online, a digital relationship, because when people walk in here all the time, they kind of already know what I'm about. They know how to talk to me, and I don't have that awkward introduction anymore. It's like, hug, stuff like that. Like it's just, it builds a relationship online. And I think that's the important thing is, especially if you're like in the Rio Grande Valley and you do business here, like you want people to know that you're capable, that you speak well, that you're presentable. I think the video podcasts and audio podcasts do that really well to convey that message.
Right. Well, yeah, understood. And I do, and I'm going to, I guess, parrot what you just said in that relationship. And that's one thing I've recognized over the last few years, is relationship is key. And because you can have ideas about people and people groups and so forth, but then you get face to face with them and you realize, wow, they're people too, and they're not evil because they have different ideas than I do. Yeah. But I don't know that you answered my question, or at least I understood it, and that is the difference between, let's just say a vlog, which is, I guess, a video blog, and a podcast. How would you differentiate those two things?
I mean, I think the vlog is more of a selfie style. You're going into a place and you're introducing, you're the expert on this, and you're sharing what the business is about, or whatever the video is about. And I think the podcast can go in a little bit more into depth in a conversation about a specific subject, or if it's just a person talking about a specific subject, it goes a little bit more in depth. And I think that's the point of a podcast, is to go into a conversation. That way you learn a little bit more about the speaker and about the guest and whatever they're talking about in depth.
Right. And so it's an interview kind of an environment.
It doesn't have to be. Podcasting, I've seen a lot of podcasts where it's just information-based, where one person is just talking about a certain subject, maybe like Bitcoin or something like that. It could be a podcast like that. But I like the interview style because I want to learn from people. Like very selfishly, this is why I started the podcast, is to learn from individuals that were doing the things that I wanted to do. So it happened to be like, if you ask somebody to come onto a podcast, it's a cool thing, because most people have never done a podcast, and some people like to be interviewed. And there's something that happens when about 20 minutes into a conversation, people start to let their guard down. And then it opens up the conversation for real conversations. And I think that's something that a podcast has allowed me to do, is like to get into people's minds and see why they do the things they do. Because at the end of the day, I'm human. I want to learn from as many people as humanly possible, and then share that information too. Did I answer your question?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, close enough. Anyway, at least I've got an understanding about that. Yeah. Oh, well, I guess there's two thoughts or two questions came up while you were saying that, and that is all the podcasts that I've seen have been more in a studio type environment. Could a podcast be done? I don't want to say on the street, but let's just say at a park bench or something.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the cool thing is that I have cameras here. I got this podcast equipment. You don't need that. Like I started the podcast with my cell phone and anchorfm.com, where it's just phone conversations. And that's literally how I started.
So it would be audio only?
It would be audio only, yeah. And when I started, then I started getting a little bit more advanced, started learning a little bit more things, and I started incorporating new equipment. But yeah, you can set up your camera on a tripod, get some good mics, because people will forgive bad video, but they will not forgive bad audio.
Yeah. No.
So that's one of the most important things. Your audio has to be clean.
Right.
So if you pair it up with good video, then you got a really good podcast.
Yeah.
So it's interesting too, is I tell people this all the time. I have a top 5 global podcast. Did you know it?
No.
So do you know why I have a top 5 global podcast?
You don't need to tell me even what you mean by that.
So globally, my podcast is ranked top 5 in the globe.
Okay.
Global podcast, like it's ranked top 5.
Okay.
Not because it's popular, but because I'm consistent.
I see what you're saying.
It's the most interesting thing in the world. So consistency along that works really well.
Okay, well, let's talk about consistency. Because the thought I had was you could do, as long as you're consistent, meaning you're every week or every month or whatever. But then the thought was, okay, I understand consistency in that you have to show up each time period. But the question now is well, how much time period? Because my feeling is that if it's a month between podcasts, it might, your audience kind of loses track of you in that time frame.
Yeah, you got to think about this too, is that there's so much content out there and not everybody's going to gravitate towards your podcast. Like mine caters to more business professionals and very specific people. But I do it consistently, at least, I would say consistently twice a month. It would be easy because one of the things that most people are going to run into is scheduling conflicts. You're going to schedule somebody and that same day they might cancel or something might come up. You have to assume that something's going to come up. So the way I like to do is I like to batch record content. So on a Monday or Tuesday, I'll schedule maybe 3 or 4 interviews at that one day, and then I have enough content for the whole month, and then I don't have to revisit that again. So I think just going about that, but also that leads to burnout. So you interviewing 4 people for an hour and then editing that stuff too, it gets very time consuming. So I had to figure out how I'm going to do this long term. So I schedule people now. I can do this interviews within an hour. And then push it out probably within another hour. So I had to work up to that point to get my editing down and the graphics and everything like that. But it just takes time. Like you have to work on your podcast, and the more and more you do it, the better you'll get at it, and the faster it can go out.
Okay. Well, okay. Now let's talk a little bit about editing. Now, just give me the overview, because I know that can we can get in the weeds there as well. Yeah. But I guess what software are you using? Give me what should I know about editing?
So I rarely edit my podcasts. This is the conversation we're gonna have. This is the conversation that's gonna go out. Those little hiccups and stuff, I don't get rid of them because it's a natural part of it. Like right. There's people that are so picky that want those little tight ums and all that stuff out. They never get their content out. Ever. So I've worked with so many people in the past, like they're so meticulous on the little tiny things that nobody's going to care about. So content at the end of the day needs to go out. And to answer your question, I use Final Cut Pro. I patch together this audio and this video together in one thing, but necessarily you don't really need to do that. So if I were to mic up these cameras and have mics on us, then the audio is good enough. And then boom, I can put the intro, outro, a little bit of music, and then upload it. It's as simple as that. And those little intros and outros really make a difference too. Right.
Okay. Well, and you mentioned in passing graphics. I'm assuming somewhere at the beginning or end or somewhere you'd throw some graphics in there. Is there anything I need to know about that?
Canva.com. People underestimate Canva.com. I've been using it for years and years because I am not a graphic designer. I don't know Photoshop. I don't have time to Photoshop. And the great thing about it is it's made for people like me that don't have a clue what they're doing.
Yeah, it's perfect.
So yeah, it's perfect. So what I'll do is I'll take stills from this podcast and I'll throw them into Canva. There's already podcast segments on there that you can just clip and push into there, and then done. Like, I think people overcomplicate things. Like, you need your content to go out. And so many people, I've seen this so many times as people collect content, like people that I get photographs of in here, they'll hold on to it forever and never push it out. And then I don't understand those things because content is cheap. Yeah. Like the content creation model now, where you can find a photographer, videographer, all that has gone down like in price significantly. And I think it's an interesting thing that content just needs to be pushed out.
Yeah.
Like don't hoard it. Yeah. Don't hold on to it, because at the end of the day, it's another piece of content that goes out every single day to push your narrative, especially if you're a business owner. Like I'm pushing content all the time because that's literally what I do. Content marketing, advertising. So it needs to be pushed out.
I was thinking back to, I've been in real estate for 37 plus years. And I remember, I guess at the national conference one year, they were trying to push video, saying, video's the next thing. We got to do video. And of course, even today, I had a meeting with a gentleman. He was talking about people don't Google anymore. They YouTube stuff, everything. And I do too. So I understand that. So video is important. I got it. But then they were talking about creating your video and then trying to make it so that you could publish it, as you said. And one of the things that stuck with me was done is better than perfect. In other words, you gotta just get it out, because if you wait and try to make it perfect, it'll never go out.
It'll never happen. I think a lot of people need to master also the art of the 60-second video. If you can get your points across in 60 seconds, 45 seconds is even better. 30 seconds is even better than that. Because you got to understand that people's attention span is very short. I think we're competing with goldfish nowadays.
I agree.
So the shorter you can get your points across, the faster that gets consumed by people. Because people, you got to think about it, like people are swiping all day long. Like these social media networks are geared specifically to get you in, hook you, and then keep you there over and over.
So is that... So you take this podcast, for example, and I'm assuming you're going to cut up pieces, 30 seconds, 60 seconds worth of...
Yeah, micro content.
That you can then also push out. So does that, you, I guess, push those out, and then you still go ahead and publish the full interview as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my schedule, I will push a podcast on Spotify on Thursday at 8 p.m., and then I'll send that same exact podcast on YouTube at 8 a.m. on Sunday morning. And then all the other content goes out during the week on stories, reels, LinkedIn, YouTube shorts, and then all that gets recycled back to head to the podcast.
Okay.
And it links out on stories. So I think that's one of the content marketing strategies I use a lot is Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I'll push out reels on the podcasts, and then on stories, I'll link them out to the Spotify link and the YouTube link, and then do that over and over and over and over again. And then with this podcast, it probably lasts about 45 minutes to an hour. I'll get 10, 15, maybe 20 pieces of content out of that. And then people see my face, see your face pop up all the time. I mean, that's brand recognition.
Right.
So I don't think people really understand the power of video. And the cool thing about video is now this whole video can get pulled into a transcript, and now that turns into a blog on LinkedIn.
That's true.
So like all these things, there's content out there. That's why I push video all the time. You need video, because this audio is clean, it's clear. You can pull the transcript from it really easily. It becomes a blog article. It becomes micro pieces of content that you can link out back to yourself. And the cool thing about it too is that when you upload it to YouTube and Spotify, well, all those are SEO. Like they're popping up on the internet. Everything's facing back to the internet. So I have my own website, joshuamoroles.com, where it's all linked together. My name's on Spotify. My name's on YouTube. If you Google my name, you'll see so many things about me. And I think this is one thing that business and entrepreneurs that they really need to understand is that we're in a digital world. Like the infrastructure of the Rio Grande Valley, the internet infrastructure is getting heavily invested in here. So that means the digitization of business is going to get better and bigger. And guess what they're going to be using? Social media and the internet.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I mean, again, as long as I've been in real estate and as much, I guess, access I have had to the internet, that if you were to Google my name, you'd find Jinks Realty fairly easily. Yeah. Of course, now looks like I'm making a shift. I'm getting ready to. I'm old enough now to consider retiring, I guess, in that respect. But I'm just shifting to a new idea, and that's why we're here starting this conversation. How do I get there?
Yeah, I think it's important that you always push out your name because I mean you've been in this community forever. So I think seeing your face in the community, you've always been a good person. You've always been well mannered and shaking hands and talking like this. I think those skills are slowly fading away. So I think, these conversations between us and showing these soft skills really shows people like this is what you need to be doing in the community because it's a lost art. Right. Like people don't even look at you in the eyes anymore.
Yeah. And I was gonna say it was a different conversation, but people that are younger than I don't like to talk on the telephone. Yeah. They want to text, and it's cumbersome. I mean, I've got too much to discuss with you. Let's just talk on the phone, get it over with. We got 10 minutes, and we'll be done. I don't need a day's worth of text back and forth trying to figure something out because you won't talk to me. Yeah. Anyway, that's a different conversation. What about now? Though, even in my case, I'm not really. I don't think monetization is the goal, but but something has to fund all of this.
Sure.
So what avenues are there in terms of funding with respect to podcasting and YouTube and such?
If you're an independent podcaster, storyteller, anything like that, you're going to invest into your product by yourself for many, many years. I think the best check that I ever got from YouTube was a whopping $5.34, my friend. So it is very apparent that I do not do this for the money. I think there's a different part where you're either paying with money or you're paying in time. But also on the other side of that, you're getting brand recognition. Like I can walk into a place now and shake people's hands and they already know me. Like they've seen my face. Like people that I've seen before, it's like, you look familiar. It's like, well, it's probably from something that I do online, right? Or advertising or something like that. But I think that's one of the most powerful things is because when you create content at scale, and there's two different types of content. There's content marketing and then there's advertising on social media specifically. Okay. So your content marketing is the stuff that I'm pushing out all the time. Like it's the reels, the pictures of me. And the advertising, this is an advertisement that's going out within a maybe 10-mile radius within my area, and it's showing my content. So technically, I don't need to be content marketing all the time because if I advertise my face, my brand message, the thing that I specifically want, now it's getting seen by multiples of thousands more. The content marketing is getting seen by a few hundred people, maybe a few thousand people, but when you put advertising behind that, that just floods the area.
Not sure I understand the advertising.
So, for example, like if I want to push my services as a digital marketer, right? And I'm pushing content all the time about content marketing, about digital marketing every single day. So I'm pushing out content on Facebook and Instagram, reels, pictures, all this stuff like that. Maybe I'll reach within a week 13 to 20,000 people. If I put $500 behind one of those ads, one of those posts, it'll get seen by multiples of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people within that 10-mile radius.
I see what you're saying.
So that's the difference between it. And I think it's one of the most underrated things because a lot of people like to see the content going out every single day, especially the business owners. They like to see the content because it means that you're busy, right? Right. But if you put out an advertisement, it's getting seen by multiples of thousands more.
What about a website? What does the website need to have?
It depends. You're talking about social media now. So you got your Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, Google My Business. What else is out there? I think those are the main ones. TikTok, Snapchat. I don't know if you really need a website nowadays. I have one specifically for me to push my services because I'm transitioning to online training. So I'm not necessarily taking on more clients locally, but I want to train one-on-one online. So it just really depends on what your business model is, what you want to do. And also the website is a great place for your home base to get a bunch of information about you. Because if you think about that, you go on Instagram and you go on my page, you're going to see a bunch of different type of things that I like. The website is catered specifically to my business. It's business oriented. It's not more social media like I'm eating pizza today or I'm lifting weights today. Right. It's like that's for social media. Right. Websites, business oriented.
Got it.
So it depends on what you want it for. I mean, some people push their personal brand on their website too. I mean, there's really no wrong way to do it. The website is your home base. It's your land that you get to claim on the internet and it goes back to you. So whatever you want to sell, whatever you want to push, your website.
Yeah, okay. Well, we pretty much exhausted all the questions I had up front. So I guess where do I start? This is the genesis of my journey in this world, this new world. In other words, I have done nothing other than begin to research. I've watched a few YouTube videos, and not many, like less than a dozen. I know what podcasts are, and the fact that I've watched podcasts. I mean, like Joe Rogan. Most people do, right? I guess where do you start? You've already pointed out that equipment's really pretty much the least of the concerns. What do I need to do to start ramping up and getting it ready so that I can start putting stuff out, or do you start slow and maybe start with your iPhone and put some stuff out until you realize what you need next and go for go to the next step. I mean, you tell me.
I think the most important first step is to push record. Like, even if it's just yourself talking, like, get used to talking on camera, because you'll find out when your camera's facing you alone, you'll lose everything that you're thinking about. It's just gone.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm thinking, is like, you have to start and just push record, because you're only going to get better. It's inconceivable to say that if you do something 100 times, 200 times, that you're going to keep sucking at it. You just keep going and going and push record, and then push that content out, because at that point, the least amount of people are going to see it. So you think about that. The least amount of people at that point are going to see it. So, and people love to give feedback too. So I don't mind feedback. And and I think one of the most interesting things about a podcast is it allows you to put your stake in the ground. Like, this is your ideas. These are your opinions. This is who you are as a person. And at the beginning, I kind of struggled with that, about giving my opinion about certain things. And at the end of the day, I found out that nobody gives a shit. Like, nobody cares. Like, they want you as a person to have your own opinion.
Right.
They want to gravitate towards somebody that they know, like, and trust, that they're kind of like. And I think it's one of the most interesting things is when I started not caring that I was cussing on my own podcast. Like, I don't know any other professional in the world that doesn't cuss.
Yeah. That's sad, but but I agree with you.
Yeah.
In fact, it's not real if you don't hear some cussing every once in a while, right?
And you can bleep it out. I mean, right. I leave it in there. But I think the most important thing is just to be yourself. Like, I think most people can't be themselves because they're working for somebody, or they're part of the community, and people are going to look at them a certain way. But at the end of the day, I found that if you do good things and you always give back and you're a good human being, nobody's going to care if you say bad words or your opinions about stuff, because what you do in the community speaks for itself. What you do as a human being speaks for itself. So.
Yeah, and you mentioned something that I think applies to all business, and when I've trained my real estate agents, I've said this over and over, and that is, people do business with people that they know, like, and trust. Yeah. If they don't know you, you've gotten nowhere. If they don't like you, they're not going to pay much attention to you, and if they don't trust you, they're definitely not going to do business with you. Right. So once you've got past those things, you've got a business model that's now going to work. I mean, I don't care what business you're in. Yeah. That's the way you've got to do it. And it also steps back to a relationship. All of this occurs as a result of that relationship that you have with people.
Yeah. And I also think, to add on to that, is you must be competent. So you have people like
and trust you. Right. They're going to trust you because you're competent. Correct. You have to be competent.
Yeah,
I agree.
Absolutely. And I think one of the most interesting things too about podcasting, or coming out as a personal brand on video, on any social media, is that now it's not one-to-one. Like, we meet off camera, it's one-to-one conversation. Now it's 1 to thousands. Like, the power of that, to be able to share your opinions, to share your views on life. And because you got to think about this too, is like, I stumbled upon this the past few years, is that a lot of people are depressed. A lot of people don't like the things that they're doing in life. So you're starting to see a decline in health and in relationships and a lot of that stuff. And I feel like the people that have a positive voice need to be coming out on social media and sharing these things, because a lot of people are lost. Like, I was lost. I mean, I slowly started getting traction and finding people that I wanted to be around and sharing a positive message. You think about it, people are so negative nowadays.
Yeah. Well, it kind of brings up a question that was in my mind a moment ago when you were speaking, is, what topics do I start with, right? I mean, I have an idea of what I want to do, and I mentioned, I guess, at the beginning of all of this, is that I just want to find out what people think, feel, what do they love about life, what do they hate about life. Just look at social ills and what can we as individuals do to positively impact our society.
Yeah, I think you're on the right track, because you think about it, it's like you can go with the algorithm and figure out what people are talking about. Like, if you want to jump on YouTube right now, or crypto Twitter right now, people are talking about crypto and Bitcoin. You can follow that trend and you'll do really well until it starts to decline. But at the end of the day, is that what you want to talk about? Like I'm literally interested in entrepreneurs, business owners, and people about why they do the things that they do. So
Yeah.
I can learn from the mistakes that they have made, and I can not make those mistakes. Like
Right.
I'm human. I'm only going to make mistakes, right? But I'm trying to limit that mistakes. So I want to learn from people that have already done these things. I want to get knowledge, and I want to share it with people. So that's kind of the premise of my podcast.
Right. Well, and again, kind of along those same lines, do you remember Michael Barnes over at
Yeah.
Grindstone when we were over there? So he came up with this idea and pitched it to me in 2019, and I just thought, oh, this is incredible. We can actually help people. This is going to be awesome. And so we created the startup. We're in... I don't know how many years we've been doing. I mean, since then, it took a while to kind of get. I guess it was COVID, which kind of caused us to hesitate. But we've had our second major retreat as a company, but the bottom line is the product. What it does is it helps people that are renting to be able to generate and build wealth.
Okay.
And because renters generally can't, because if I had enough money to buy a house, which is what would help me build my wealth, then I'd be buying a house. And the fact that I'm renting is just shows you that that's the stage of life that I'm in. Well, we've created this product that allows people to build wealth while renting. So much so that it probably might be more advantageous than owning itself, which as a realtor, the first thought I had was, wait a minute, am I eliminating my industry altogether? And then I thought about it long enough, and I thought, well, wait a minute, that's an exciting thing, that you can find something that's even better than what I thought was the best thing. Anyway, I wasn't here to pitch that
That's an
per se.
interesting thing, though.
Well, and we can talk about that one of these days, but the point is I believe that there's probably many more people in this country that have similar or better ideas, and those are the people I want to seek out, find, and expose to the rest of society, saying, hey, we've got great ideas, and we've got ideas that not only are just great ideas, but they actually work.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that's the problem with politics, right? Is we can come up with these great ideas, but if it doesn't work, well, all I need for you to do is elect me next year. Yeah. We'll forget about that and we'll go on to do something else. But no, let's find something that really works and let's let's put our efforts behind that.
Yeah.
And anyway, so that's what I'd like to try to do. And I don't know where else to look to find these people. But I think if I get out in the country and start asking, eventually they're going to show up.
Yeah, and I think you also hit on an interesting thing too, is because a lot of businesses are struggling. I think I heard the statistic: 10 to 12 million businesses will close every single year. It's a staggering number, and a lot of it is due to awareness. Like people just simply do not know the businesses around. So how you fix that is these things: podcasts, social media, putting yourself out there. And I think a lot of business owners are uncomfortable doing that. And at the end of the day, if you want your business to survive, it's going to be you that's going to be out there shaking the hands, making content, pushing out stuff. And that's not only one way to do it, right?
Right.
But I mean, the more proactive you are in pushing your business in front of people's eyeballs, the more people are going to know you're around and say, hey, I'm right here.
Yeah.
This is what I do. This is what I do for a living. Come give me a try. If you like it, then you get a customer.
Right.
Keep coming and coming and coming. So I think it's one of the most important things that is out there is social media. It's like you're talking about like TV that's out there. It's really expensive.
Oh yeah.
Radio, expensive.
Well, and who watches TV anymore?
Yeah.
That's the other problem. You get I'm a small business owner and have been for pretty much all my life, and so you've got to figure out, where do I put my money? Where is it best spent so that, and I've made all kinds of mistakes, spent lots of money in places that didn't actually produce the business that I thought it was going to when we spent the money. I think that's the thing about being a small business owner. There's a huge amount of risk there, which means there better be a pretty good return. Then the flip side of that is if you are successful and you do make millions or billions of dollars, now you've got people that are going to look down upon you because, they just hit it big and whatever, and they're just too big for their pants, and it just. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, you can't please anybody.
You can't, and you're not going to, right? But the thing is you put out all this risk, and then there's no there's no admiration for that at all.
Yeah, definitely not. I think what the saying is, people will support you until you start doing better than them.
Right, exactly. I mean, we've had even over at Grindstone when we were over there, just talking to people in general, and you find out that basically you run into the people that say, well, so and so makes so many millions of dollars. That's just too much money. Well, how much is too much?
Yeah,
and
I want to find out for myself.
and then, and I've done a lot of mission work down in Mexico and so forth. And I said, look, I know people who live on less than $500 a year. Yeah. Why don't we make $500 a year the cap? Oh no, that's too small. Why? Is that because it's less than you currently make, and you don't like the guy who makes more than you make? That's just the bottom line.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to understand what people's thoughts processes are, because there's a lot of people that have like limiting beliefs. Like I didn't realize that I could do certain things and I can make milestones in my business until I broke those things. I could do that. And you keep going and you keep going, you keep going. And I think that I run into that same problem all the time. It's like, I don't even talk about half the things I do anymore. Mm-hmm. I just keep my head down, keep plowing forward, because at the end of the day, people are negative. Like,
right.
They're going to say something.
Right, and I can move on. I had a weird situation yesterday. First off, kind of out of the blue, I get a text from a guy that has a lot over in Florida, wants to sell. But it started off just like all the other scams that I hear. Well, but I kept checking it out, and within a couple of hours, actually I had a listing on the property. About an hour after that, I get a call from a guy, and I said, I pick up my cell phone. I said, hello, this is Lee. And he says, is that how you answer your business phone? And instantly, now I'm on the defensive, or I'm kind of pissed off at him. Yeah. And I took a breath long enough to go, how can I help you? He says, well, you can't because you blew it. And he hangs up on me.
Wow.
And I thought, that kind of upset me enough that I sent him a text saying, well, that was weird. You called me on my cell phone. I answered it. My business requires that I have a relationship with people so that I can know what they need so I can better help them. And I said something about, and then because of the way I answered my phone, you chewed me out. And he answers back, well, nobody chewed you out, and good try trying to be a victim. And I thought,
oh, geez.
Well, the thought is part of the thought in the back of my mind is, oh gosh, I'm going to lose a client.
Right.
No, I'm not, because that's not the client I want. Yeah. I do not want to work with that guy ever.
Yeah, that took me years to understand that. It's like there's certain people that you will work well with, and there's certain people that you just cannot please.
Right. And working with my agents in terms of training them, I've tried to help them understand there are listings that you don't want because it's not going to sell, and if it doesn't sell, all you're going to get is a bad name out of it. So if they're not willing to do what needs to be done to get it sold, then move on, because you're wasting your time otherwise, and your reputation. You pointed that out. Reputation is really important.
Yeah. Let me ask you this.
Sure.
Now that you're here, what are the top skills that you think like realtors need here in the Valley? Because from what I understand, there's a ton of realtors out there. Mm-hmm. It's hard to literally to get out of your shell, right? Mm-hmm. It's hard to stand out, for one. What are the skills that realtors need specifically to be able to stand out and sell more properties?
Okay, so you mentioned competence. Now, the problem with that is it's kind of like the word experience, right? You need experience. Well, how do you get experience? Well, by messing up a few times, right? Yeah. Making bad decisions, or how does this thing go? Is what do you attribute to your success? Great decisions. Well, how do you get great decisions? Experience. Well, how do you get experience? Bad decisions. So you need to be competent about, and then you need to be confident that you have your competence, right, to step out there and do what needs to be done. So I would say primarily just the competence and the love of people in a way that you want to do what's best for them, right? And then helping people will endear them to you and so forth. And of course, all of that happens through relationship. Same things we've already been talking about. But the one little thing that I guess I'd throw out there, and it sounds snarky, but it's really the truth. You got to answer your phone. Yeah. You got to answer your phone. and you got to be able to be willing to talk to somebody on the phone. Text works there are places and for text that are perfect, right? Text is best for some scenarios, but you got to be willing to talk to them on the phone at the very least. And of course, meeting face to face is the best. That's the absolute best. But yeah, you got to know what you're doing. You do it well, and you got to love people in order to be able to help them.
Yeah, I think a lot of people underestimate the power of sales. Like learning sales is an art. It's a skill, and if you learn how to sell, like you're going to sell more. Like I think people are scared of it.
Yeah, I mean, I've taken lots of training on sales. I don't know that I consider myself a great salesman, and I'll put that in quotes, right? I've never been super successful in real estate, and at least from the standpoint of top producer or the top 10 people or the top 50 anyway in this area.
It seems like there's a top producer like every single week.
Yeah, it's true, and you're right. And depending on, I love statistics, and so you can make it do whatever you want. I guess I was top producer on January 12th of 1970, whatever. But so I've actually had Realtor of the Year award in the past. I've been the president of the local association in the past. I've worked at the state level before, and so getting involved, that's important, and giving it back to your community. All those things are important, but that's not what makes you money.
Right.
But I do think there's a factor in, now that I said that out loud, there's an aspect to that, though. When you show that you care, I guess, which brings back this other, what's it called, idiom that says, people don't care what you know until they know that you care.
Yeah.
You've got to, I'll just say it again. You got to love people, and you got to have a relationship with them.
Yeah, and I also feel that a lot of people underestimate how many people you really need to shake hands with until you get a deal. Like you have to get multiples of thousands of people and over and over and over and over again. I feel like most people, they'll let their feelings get in the way. They'll let, if you're feeling a little sick, under the weather, they're not going to get up that day to go do the things that they need to do, and they lose a sale.
Yeah, no, it is difficult. My son is in real estate, and I think it took him a little while to kind of realize that you do a lot of free work until finally you get paid. And that in itself has its own drawbacks, because when you finally do get paid, the person that is the owner of that property that's paying the commission goes, oh my gosh, that's a lot of money. You're making more than you really ought to be making. Mm-hmm. Well, I know what you're saying, but the problem is that I do a lot of things that I don't get paid for, and this is how the system works. Yeah. I don't know that I like it, but it is how it works. I'm thinking about a company that I've been working for years, and I don't get paid for all of the work that I do, but I've gotten paid pretty big on one transaction I helped him with, and I'm helping him with one right now that when we finally close, it'll be a nice payoff. Not huge, but a decent payoff. And if the people in the head of that company that I'm working with look at my commission and go, oh, wow. I mean, he only worked with us for the last 3 months and he's getting that kind of money? That sounds like too much money. No, that's not true. I've been working for you for the last 10 years. Yeah. There have been plenty of deals that we've tried to work forward, and I've showed you properties, and we've done this and that, and I haven't got paid for any of that. Yeah. So
yeah, it's interesting because I bring that stuff up all the time to people. It's like, would you work for free to get your foot in the door, to get your name known? And most people are no.
Well, the answer is you have to. Because your foot's not getting in the door until you do.
Yeah.
At least in real estate, and I'm going to assume pretty much most businesses.
I would assume so too, because I feel like if you're not putting yourself out there, if you're not showing people that you have some work ethic, that you can do the things that you say you can do, especially if you have no experience, like you kind of have to do that. Like you have to show people like what you're capable of, and sometimes that's free work.
Right.
Unfortunately, but that's just how it is.
Right. So, and I'll kind of relate this back to our this podcast discussion. So I started into around 2000. I realized that the internet was going to be big, especially as it related to real estate, and that the little tiny, 1-inch photographs that we had in the MLS book that we had that were all black and white, photography didn't matter in real estate. But I realized this is going to change. So I needed to get better at real estate photography. So I started buying better equipment and started getting better and learning. And 10 years later, I've gotten good enough that other agents are calling me saying, hey, could you come shoot for me? And I start charging. Initially it was difficult to get people to pay for real estate photography because they didn't understand why that was a big deal.
Yeah.
But now, actually, it got so big that I was shooting for consistently for a half dozen agents in town, like regularly, and I had to sell all my equipment because I loved doing it so much. I had to sell the equipment so that I would stop doing real estate photography because my real business was real estate. Real estate sales, and I needed to focus on that and the agents. So I had to get rid of the equipment in order to force myself not to do it anymore.
Wow.
But now I have people call me, hey, I need a real estate photographer. I said, okay, here's the guy I like to use. Or, I got 2 or 3 guys that are really, really good at it.
Yeah.
And of course, I had a friend of mine who got into real estate and moved to Indiana. He's an ATP, which is an airline transport pilot. So he's been in aviation his whole life. He was a jet pilot for a local corporation, and I'm telling you that part of it because one day he calls me. He says, "Hey, we're going to come down or whatever, spend the weekend. Maybe you can show me how to shoot photos like you do." And I'm thinking to myself, okay, so it took me 10 years to learn how to do it well. Yeah. I could probably teach a person to do it in a week, right? But if we focus, if we did 50 houses in that week and showed them how to do it all and showed them all the way the editing and the lighting that we used and the equipment that we used. And then of course he'd have to come up with a bunch of money to pay for the equipment to make it all work. But it kind of, I'll just use the word pissed me off again because he's telling me, hey, you can just show me how to do it in a week or, in a weekend because it can't be all that hard. The first thought I had was, yeah, and you can show me how to be an ATP in that same weekend, right?
Yeah. It's an interesting thing to see people's thoughts. Like if you do something for so long, it comes very easy to you, right?
Right.
But like I can edit a video now in 60 seconds. Like,
right.
It took years to be able to get to that point. It's an interesting thing.
Back to that, the real estate photography stuff, I would take 3 hours in a house. That's how long it took me. And it was, one day I shot at this brand new house and it was vacant. So I had all the free reign to do what I wanted. It took me 3 hours because I was trying to get the right angles and so forth. And when I came back to edit, there were some things about it I just didn't like. And I was going to go back and reshoot it. And I thought, you know what? This is great because now that I've already got those angles, I know what I'm doing. I can go back in there and I can get this done a lot faster. Guess what? It took me 3 hours every single time. And then I changed some techniques and I got it down to 2 hours, which if you know anything about real estate photography, you can't charge enough to to take 2 hours in the house. Right. You just can't charge enough to make all that work. The math never works out.
Doesn't make sense, yeah.
And then one day I was in a huge rush. I had my daughter with me and so I had her carry some equipment. I said, hey, I got to shoot this house. It'll take a few minutes. I'll do it as fast as I can. I was in and out in about 45 minutes. I went back and edited it, and it looked just as good as the ones that took 2 hours. Yeah. And I thought, oh, now I think I've got it. And so, I can even get it down in less time than that if I've got really, but the thing is, you've got to be able to get in there and get out. And you've got to be able to produce a product that people are happy with. And that's exactly. The other thing too is that you've got to produce what your client wants, not what you think is great. Because I could produce what I think is much better than what they want, but they're going to pay for what they want.
For sure, yeah. For sure. And I think one of the interesting things to add on to that too is as I found running ads for photographers. Like for photographers, I know a ton of them, and none of them are pushing advertising. If they were to push advertising button, the boost button on their thing, they would get more gigs exponentially. Like, I think people are underrating this, especially this is the same thing I tell business owners too, is like, if you push your advertising specifically for photographers, for businesses, more people are going to know about your work. More people are going to see your work, for one. And people are going to know exactly what you do. Like, and then the cool thing about it is that the advertising is optimized to be able to get that click. So they're going to send you a message button. It's going to go straight to business. How much do you charge? What do you do? And then boom, it's probably going to happen. You're going to get hired.
Yeah.
Like, it's people underrate social media.
Yeah.
And it's cool because I'm taking advantage of all of it. But at some point, people are going to wake up and realize, like, this is a very powerful tool. And that's why I kind of moved my business model. Instead of content marketing, is I'm teaching business owners now how to advertise with one-on-one training. It's an interesting thing because I found also that going back to that same statistic of 10 to 12 million businesses that are going to close, if a business owner can now save thousands of dollars on advertising costs of hiring an advertising agency and learning how to do it, learn exactly how much to spend, learn exactly what to push out, the offers and all this stuff, they have literally cut out the middleman, me, and then be able to do this on their own. And that gives them the best chance to be able to survive an extra month. It's the most interesting thing to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's so many different things that could cause a business failure. You had mentioned that earlier, and I was just thinking, so you've got government regulations on you that change in the middle. You know, you can't change the rules of the game right in the middle of the game. Yeah. Well, the government doesn't play by that rule. Right. They can change it anytime they want. And, you know, so you can look at various, major financial failures throughout the country over the years, and many of them has been due to policy changes. And I don't think people realize how effective or how devastating that can be. But then, you know, there's just and then of course there's just the business environment itself can cause that. And then just making one bad decision can cause that.
And also add on to that, I think some business owners are just bad business owners.
Well, you can just you just not know what you're doing. I mean, you might know, whatever. I might know plumbing really, really well, but running a business is not doing plumbing, right? Photography, I guess, since that's what I do know, is I can be a really great photographer, but if I don't know how to run a business, then I can't make money at it. Yeah. So it takes a very special person to run their own business.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on AI? We were talking about this earlier. It's an interesting thing.
It definitely can be scary. We talked just a little bit about some things that we saw, and because it's something I wanted to believe, I instantly believed it, but it took me a few seconds to step back and go, wait a minute, there's something that's not right here. Yeah. And then you can spot the AI, I guess, if you try, but that's the problem. You have to put some effort into it.
Yeah, the average person will not understand it, or they'll see past it, and they'll see the little glitches, but they'll just assume that it's
because they want to believe it. They choose to. That's what I've learned about life: is people believe what they choose to believe, and you're not going to change their mind if that's what they want to believe, and it doesn't have to. I actually know people who believe that the Earth is flat. So you've heard about the flat earthers, and we giggle about them, and then but no,
they're out there.
They truly, truly believe it, and there is absolutely nothing you're going to say to them. And so I've even seen many of these debunking. You know, this debunks the flat Earth, and you're wasting your time because you're not going to change their mind. Stop it. Yeah. Don't even worry about it. Move on, because that's a. But AI, just like any other technology that we've introduced into this world, it can be used for some incredible positive things. I had another person who was over at Grindstone, Cooper Thompson, was working on an automated valuation model for real estate. In other words, it could do appraisals, but he was going to use AI to factor in more variables than we as a human could ever grasp. Like, how far is it away from the Starbucks, and how far is it away from obviously schools and that kind of thing. But it's almost impossible as a human to put all of those factors together in one. But AI can take and analyze all of those things and eventually bring it and probably come up with a more accurate evaluation than a human could. I think that's possible. I've not seen it happen yet, because I think that's the other thing. I think we also don't put enough value on human, intuition. I'm trying to think, gut feelings. There are things that we can know, and we don't know how we know them. But as humans, I think we've got it. So I see AI as, yes, that can be scary. I'm really hoping that we can use it for some incredible good.
Yeah, there's an interesting topic on the ethics of AI, and I got access to AI last year, and I started just jumping into it every single day for 2 to 3 hours a day, just to learn it so I can get ahead of the curve.
Yeah.
And at one point I was just overusing it, and then I started stumbling upon the ethics of AI, and I figured, I was like, yeah, it's a huge thing. You need to be ethical with the way you use AI, because putting out information that's false, or putting out inaccurate information and people believe it, then you're creating more problems.
Yeah, which is another thing you pointed out is false. I've used ChatGPT for a lot of things, generally to get me started on something I was trying to write. For example, I used AI to write my wedding vows. Now, to be truthful, I don't think I used one word out of the AI, but it got me going. It's like, oh wow, that's great. Now let me take it, and I just kind of reworked it. By the time I finished, there was none of that left in there. But if I didn't have it, I don't know if I'd be here today. I'd still be sitting there trying to figure out how to get started on all of that. That's just an example, but AI also, I've had it write some stuff, and I read it and go, wait a minute, that's not really true. So just because it's AI doesn't mean it's true. You need to understand that as well.
Yeah, there are biases in it too. It's interesting to see.
I was listening to Jordan Peterson about that, and he said he had learned, not from himself, because he says, I'm not that smart, but some guy figured out how to prompt ChatGPT to write something that it had refused to write when he prompted it earlier. And
there's ways around it.
There are ways around it, and so that's good. So you got to learn. You got to learn all of that. I'm excited. I'm excited about it. I maybe I'm just an optimist, because I look at things and I think of all the good that we can get out of it.
Absolutely.
Just any technology.
Yeah, and I think one of the most interesting things that I've used it for is because I'm always trying to learn from somebody, and I can't find mentors out there. So it's very hard to find a mentor, for one, and then two, for them to give me time. So I just recreated my mentors on ChatGPT, and I have like 5 different mentors that I go in there and I research every single day about the things that I'm interested in. Because I only talk about maybe 4 different things ever. I don't ever deviate from those things. So I try to just know those 4 things really well, and that's all I know. So I got mentors to teach me about that stuff, and I research it a ton. I think it's one of the best research tools that's out there, just to learn more and learn fast. That's the important part, is you learn quick, and then you implement those things, and you can fail quicker and then succeed faster.
Well, no. That's to having a feedback loop quickly. I mean, that's, again, I'll reach back into photography. I actually started into photography with film, but there was some discussion about the difference between film photography and digital photography. Well, film photography cost me money every time I push the shutter button. So I had to be very deliberate about every shot that I took. And so I put more effort into it. But with digital, I could take a lot of photos and I could see instant return. In other words, an instant result of what I did, and then make an adjustment and fix. So I could actually learn faster with digital than I could, or anybody could learn faster with digital than they could with film, because I could just do much more of it. One of the things, and I'm grinning because I was trying to people would always ask me, how do I learn how to take better photos. And I said, well, I've got some tips for you. Well, I think I gave 10 tips. And the last tip that I gave was take lots of photos. And we're talking about real estate photography in this case. Take lots of photos. And they started posting lots of bad photos. And I thought, oh, I don't know why I didn't remember, I didn't think to say this. In fact, I still wonder why I have to say this, but take lots of photos, but only post the good ones. So I had to add that to my deal. Only post the good ones. In fact, I read an article one time about this, and it makes so much sense, is how do you become a better photographer instantly? And that is, only post your best stuff.
Yeah.
And they even told you to post only like the best 5 out of 100 photos. Well, I can't decide which ones are my best 5. Yeah, you can. You just need to put some effort into it and go, okay, you have to go, no, not this, but I really like that one. Yeah, but you like this one better? Yes. Okay, throw that one away. Yeah. Now come back and only post the best ones. And then people will start realizing you're a better photographer.
For sure. And it's the same thing with editing, like documentaries and film. Is like you want to add so much, but at the end of the day, you got to chop a bunch of that stuff down because you need to tell a story, and you needed that story to be as short as possible and engaging.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because that helps me. Yeah. Because it takes that same principle and it applies it to the video. Is that you only post the best stuff. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So I was thinking, earlier I told you how. It kind of upset me that somebody told me, I want you to teach me how to, everything you've learned in the last 10 years in 10 minutes, right? And that's coming in here with that mentality is like, I know I'm not going to know everything about podcasts, but I just want him pointing me in the right direction. And that's what we've done. But I also think you've also given me lots of really good tips.
Cool, man.
And that last one I really like.
Awesome, cool. Well, if there's anything else I can ask before we finish off the podcast?
Well, like I said, I've run out of questions. We started talking about other things in podcast at this point, so yes.
All right, cool, guys. Then we will see you next time on the Sesh. Peace.
Ready to start the show, Joshua Moroles podcast. You already know, with a special guest, Jinks in the building. Learning how to podcast, we out here fulfilling. Mic check, 1, 2. Let's dive into the scene, talking all things podcasting, living the dream, from right techniques to editing finesse. We're breaking it down, no need to guess. Displaying knowledge like an audio infection. With Joshua Moroles and Jinks, a perfect connection. Unlocking all the secrets, tips and tricks galore. Building an empire, we're ready for much more. With Joshua Moroles and Jinks, a perfect connection. Unlocking all the secrets, tips and tricks galore. Building an empire, we're ready for much more.